Today is Friday, March 16th, 2007, and we are interviewing Richard Wesley Ryman at GrassRoots Television in Aspen, Colorado. Mr. Ryman is 81 years old, having been born on 16 October 1925. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Dick Merritt, United States Marine Corps retired, and I'll be interviewing for the Roaring Fork Valley Veterans History Project. Dick, welcome. Could you state for the recording what was your branch of service?
I was in the United States Navy for about 2.5 years, almost 3 years.
What years were those, Dick?
I went into the service in 1941 in March.
And what was your rank when you served in the Navy?
I was torpedoman 3rd class when I was discharged.
And where did you serve, Dick?
I served in, well, I was at Great Lakes Naval Training Station. I had my boots there. Boot camp was 3 weeks in those days. And then I went to torpedo school at Great Lakes. And then I went aboard the USS Wilson in San Francisco.
Could you tell us a little bit about your background, where you were raised and your family?
Yes, I was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, and my father was a dentist there. We had a big house out east of Lincoln, and he had 2 airplanes, and we were doing quite well. And he was killed on a flying trip up in Montana in 1934, and I was 8 years old at the time. I had a little sister. She was 5, and our life kind of changed then. The airplanes were taken away in a matter of days, and we lost the house, and it was we had a different life from then on.
Life changed dramatically for you.
You bet, you bet.
And that was during the Depression?
Yes, I think probably, of course, I was 8 years old. I didn't know much about the economics, but it was the Depression, and we were coming out of it.
How did your father's death change your mother's life?
She had to go to work, and she worked for the state of Nebraska and their social services for a while, and she realized that she wanted to be a medical social worker, and to do that she had to have her master's degree. She was a graduate from the University of Nebraska, as my father was. And she went back to Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio, and got her master's degree. And my sister and I, were in a little town, Tecumseh. It was about 60 miles southeast of Lincoln, where my father and I used to fly on Sundays and buzz my grandparents' house. And I lived with my grandparents down there, and my sister was with an aunt. And I think, were there 3 years. And my mother graduated from, got her master's from Western Reserve University, and then she got a job in Rochester, New York, and she was at Strong Memorial Hospital there, and we were there for 2 or 3 years. And
were you happy with living back east, or were you?
No, I hated the East. I went to Monroe High School back there, and we lived, I know everybody lived a long ways from school and had to walk in cold weather and everything. Well, we lived over a mile from school, and I had to walk through 2 different ethnic neighborhoods to get back and forth, and it got to the point where I had to run very fast when I went to school and from school, and I always seemed to make it. And I attended Monroe High School then.
Were there any other family members, aunts, uncles, or grandparents that supported your family during the Depression and after your father's death?
No, the bad part of the Depression, well, because we were in tough shape in Lincoln from the time my father died until, well, all during my mother's schooling, but we got along all right. I think my mother had some help from Grandpa.
At any point did you ever get west of Lincoln, Nebraska? in your youth?
Right after my father died, 3 or 4 weeks after that, just to clear the air, my grandfather wanted to take us all on a trip to Yellowstone Park. And we had a new car. I think it was a 36 Chevy, maybe a 35, I don't know. But we drove out to there, and my father had won a couple of lots in a new development out there, Red Feather Lakes. Nobody had ever heard of the place, and we thought, well, let's stop at Red Feather and look at those lots and see what they are, so my mother could make her plans about what she wanted to do with them. And we drove up to Red Feather, and my grandfather hadn't been well, and we rented a cabin up there. And we spent the night, and the next morning my grandfather woke up and he said, you know, I had the best night of sleep I've had in years. He said, I want to stay right here for our 3 weeks or 4 weeks or however long it was. And we spent the rest of the summer. And then we came back to Nebraska. And I think that's when my mother went to New York. She might have worked a year or so for the state of Nebraska. I think maybe she did.
Well, was that the start of your Colorado connection then?
Yeah, that was that. And we started, well, before we had left Red Feather, my grandfather bought a cabin there. And so for every summer from then on, we'd be out there in May and stay until school started. And I loved Red Feather. It was a great place, and I knew every rock and every hill out there. And I made good friends with a boy named Junior Boss, and we were just almost inseparable. We did lots of hiking, and at 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, we would go out and do overnight things by ourselves and just out in the woods. And we had a great time. I loved Red Feather.
Is Junior still about the area?
No, I lost track of him later, and somebody told me that he didn't come back from the war, and I don't know where he went. I've tried to find him. I've been back to Red Feather, and I've inquired around. And his family moved someplace, and I don't think, I know Junior would have been back if he was alive, because he loved it like I did.
Great. Well, let's get on to the war itself. Were you drafted, or did you enlist in the Navy?
Oh, well, the draft was there, and I was still in high school. And in my senior year of high school, I wasn't a good student, but I had all the requirements to graduate, but I needed 2 more classes just for the hours. And I had gotten interested in drums and had a set of drums, and I was playing a little bit with a bunch of young high school kids. Had a little band in one of my friend's basement, and we knocked around a little bit and thought we were musicians. And there was a band in Lincoln, a man by the name of Eddie Garner had a band. And at that time, everybody was getting drafted. And he called our saxophone player and wanted him to audition with his band. And he went over and he hired him. He was a good saxophone player, and he became one of the very good saxophone players. But a week or 2 later, the guy needed a trumpet player. Musicians were getting drafted out of these bands so fast, and they called our trumpet player, and he went over and tried out. He was hired, and in about a week later, they called me. They needed a drummer, and the band rehearsed a lot, and we were playing quite a bit. And finally it became a pretty good band. Every Wednesday night was rehearsal, and we played most weekends, and then a lot of times during the week. And eventually we were working 5 or 6 nights a week, and then later on it became quite a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Well, why did you join the Navy? I mean, you had options, didn't you?
I wanted into the Navy, and you asked me a minute ago about did I enlist or was I drafted. I was turning 18 in October, and I wanted to join the Navy, and I don't know whether I remember whether I enlisted or I tried to enlist, but I think I actually enlisted in December, because I knew if I was drafted, I would be in the Army, and I did want to go to the Navy.
Mm-hmm. Good. Can you tell me a little bit about boot camp and where you went to boot camp and
Yeah,
how that went?
Let me go back to my final semester in high school when I was going to breeze through. I was in the class, to be in the class of 1943. Well, in my final semester, we had our band, and I was playing quite a bit, and I missed quite a bit of school. Mm-hmm. And all I was taking was boys cooking and typing. Mm-hmm. Well, we got up to graduation day, and guess whose name wasn't on the list? I had flunked typing.
Oh,
I just wasn't there enough. And that's a course that you really got to be with. And so I had to go back. But we played a lot that summer, and I went back to school, and I just took a couple of things and graduated in January. Well, that was when I enlisted in the Navy, but they didn't call me until after school was out, and then I didn't get my call. I think I graduated in January, and I didn't get my call until I think March. I went into the Navy.
Where'd you go to boot camp, and how long did boot camp last?
Well, now boot camp was 12 weeks. We went through in 3 weeks, and boy, I thought now it's the Navy and off we go. But I was sort of disappointed to look up on the bulletin board, and my name was one of those who'd qualified for a service school. They gave us an aptitude test, and I can't believe it, but I scored very high in mechanics, mm-hmm. and I'm the worst mechanic in the world. And but I qualified, and they sent me to torpedo school.
Where was that torpedo school?
That was right in Great Lakes. I stayed right there. It was 12 weeks.
12 weeks longer.
That was a pretty good 12 weeks, though, because we had liberties, I think 3 out of 4 weekends, mm-hmm. and we were only 25 or 30 miles from Chicago, and I could catch the train right there at Great Lakes and go into Chicago and stay overnight. We could usually find a cheap hotel, mm-hmm. and while I was down there, I got to hear the Glenn Miller Service Band mm-hmm. twice.
Wow. And
there were jazz joints all over Chicago, and I was in one of them every Saturday night.
Swing band.
Yeah, and I met great musicians in there.
Dick, did you stay in torpedoes throughout your Navy career then?
Yeah, I was. I graduated from torpedo school, and then immediately left on a troop train for the West Coast, and that was about a 3-day ordeal. I went to an outgoing barracks, an outgoing base, which was Shoemaker, California. And I had a very short stay there. I arrived about 11 o'clock at night, sea bag on the shoulder, and they took me to a barracks, and the guy showed me where my bunk was, and I threw my sleeping bag, or my sea bag, down on the bunk, and leaned against it, and I had a little flashlight in there, and I put that in my mouth, and I reached in, and I got a piece of paper, and I was writing my girlfriend a letter, and I heard someone calling my name. The lights were out, it was dark, and somebody was calling my name with a flashlight, and I answered him, and he said, "Ryman, you're on a draft." And I thought, well, boy, this hasn't taken much time at all. And I picked up my sea bag and followed him, and he took me out to a lot out there, and there were 6 or 7 guys in the lot with their sea bags, and we sat on our sea bags and waited about 4 or 5 hours. I don't know, I might have taken a little snooze, but in a little while it started to get light, and somebody came out and said, "If you guys want to have some breakfast, we just opened the mess hall over here." And we went over and had breakfast and came back, and about 8 or 9 o'clock, a truck came, and we were all told to get on the back of this truck. And we went into Oakland, and he took us out to a little base, and there were 2 destroyers there, and one of them was the USS Wilson, and the other one was the USS Sterett, the 407 and the 408. And 2 of the fellas got off, and they were assigned to the Sterett, and a guy named Bobby Gordon and I jumped off of the truck and went down and walked up the gangplank and saluted the flag, and somebody shook our hands and said, "Welcome to the USS Wilson."
Dick, over here is your Navy jumper, and that's the torpedoman emblem there.
Right.
Yeah, you see the torpedo.
Yeah.
And you know, you probably had some other options. Maybe go to submarines to torpedo.
Yeah,
how did you wind up on a destroyer?
We had our choice. We had, did we want to, we could have gone to an aircraft carrier and been done the torpedoes for the Avengers, or we could go to submarines. Submarines, that appealed to me, but it was another 12 or 16-week school, and I'd had enough schools, and I wanted to get out there. And I was afraid that war was going to be over, and they were going to leave me out.
So you set sail from Oakland and headed west?
Well, when I got on the ship, must have been almost noon, and there was a little chalk note on a locker there. It says, "Underway at 13:30. That was an hour and a half, and by 4 o'clock that afternoon, the guy I'd gotten on the ship with was a young kid named Bobby Gordon from Jamestown, New York, and we were going under the Golden Gate Bridge headed west. And Bobby Gordon said, you know something? He says, "I'm only 15 years old." I said, "Well, good luck, pal." And Bobby Gordon and I got to be good friends. We were together for the whole war.
So you headed west out in the Pacific, and where was your first contact with the Japanese forces?
Well, we went to Pearl Harbor. First, we had to go through a gunnery exercises, and that was lasted 3 or 4 days. And we were about to qualify, and they'd fly a drone over towing a sleeve, and we'd shoot the sleeve. Well, we made a terrible mistake. We shot down the drone, and they slapped our hands, I think, a little bit for that. They told us we didn't qualify and we'd have to go out again. Well, the ships we were working with went on, and we had to stay and 2 or 3 more days and qualify. And then we went south. We went to Guadalcanal, and we were escorting the General Morton, which was a troop transport down to Guadalcanal. And we were down there for a few days taking on supplies and things like that. And we didn't get off the ship. We were just doing exercises and things.
So did you spend any Liberty time in Hawaii, or did you basically...
No, we didn't get off the ship in Hawaii on that trip.
How long were you on that ship, on the Wilson? Without any recreation?
15, 16 months.
15 or 16 months.
We went from Guadalcanal. We got some supplies, and we went north there to the Philippines. And we had the first enemy action, the first thing that happened, we had a submarine contact, and we dropped a bunch of charges. And I don't know if we hit anything or not. There was no debris, and we patrolled the area for a while and went on to the Philippines.
What happened when you got to the Philippines?
Well, there were a lot of interesting things. We got there on, we were just on standby, and we were there on. I noticed we were there on December the 17th, and that's when the big typhoon hit our fleet and caused such heavy damage. They called it Halsey's Typhoon, and there's just been a book released.
Could you hold that up for us, Dick? Tell us a little bit about it.
An insert.
Yeah, just
an insert from the book, and I'm sorry I don't have the book with me, but this has just been released, and it's about that typhoon, and it was a pretty tragic thing. These were all ships that were headed to help MacArthur's efforts on Leyte. He'd landed there with with troops, and they had a big campaign going in there, and this typhoon was a disaster. 3 ships that the Wilson had worked with, oh gosh, the name of those was the Spence and the Hull and the Monaghan, and they were all sunk. They were all low on fuel, and when a destroyer empties a fuel tank, they fill it with water so the ballast will still be there. Well, they were given orders to pump their tanks, pump the water out of their tanks, and they were down to a very, very low fuel. And before they could get fueled, it was so that the typhoon had hit, and the sea was so rough, it was made fueling impossible, just breaking their hoses and slamming ships against each other, and they couldn't do it. And there were 3 destroyers sunk in that typhoon, and there were a total of I think it was 800 men were drowned on that.
and so the loss was caused by the typhoon and not by the Japanese forces.
Oh, the Japanese weren't there. It was totally by the typhoon, but it was very poor planning. This thing washed planes off of aircraft carrier decks and things like that. It damaged lots of ships, and it put a dent in our Navy. It was.
Well, what we're finding is a lot of the veterans were told not to keep diaries, but a lot of them did. And what I see here is a diary that you kept throughout the war. Could you relate about the typhoon where you thought that perhaps something was amiss when those destroyers didn't come back?
Well, yeah. Nobody really knew what was going on with the rest of the war when we were out there. I mean, this typhoon was going on. We didn't know about that. We knew that where we were, the seas were very rough. I called one of my best Navy buddies last night, and just to confirm the date as to where we were and when and he said, yeah, he said, it was very rough then. He said, I remember that. And my diary shows that on the 18th, we were underway to find a convoy. Well, they weren't too far out from the Philippines, maybe a day or 2 out from the Philippines when this hit. So we were feeling the rough weather too. Mm-hmm. And we didn't find anything. We came back.
Mm-hmm. Did you then engage the Japanese forces in the Philippines?
Yeah, we had December 20, excuse me, 27th, I think we formed up with a large convoy. We had 58 ships and 30 PT boats. I think in the ships there were 5 big Liberty ships, and we didn't know what they were carrying yet. At that
1944.
time, but they were heading for Mindoro, and this convoy formed up, and we rendezvoused with them, made up the convoy, and left, and that was quite a trip. All of the ships were lost on that, all of the cargo ships. We had one very spectacular thing. The first morning we were out, I think it was on the 29th probably, we had an ammo ship blow up, and it was about probably 2 miles from us, and it just exploded and nothing came down. And there's a picture of that ammo ship blowing up in my memoirs.
Going back to your memoirs, which we'll go through after, I've read it. It's really outstanding. Before I was old enough to vote, and so you were 18 when you went
Right.
in, and you had to be 21 to vote back there. So times has changed. How were those our ships sunk? Were they torpedoed or dive bombed or
Most
what?
of it was kamikaze.
Kamikaze.
I was out there for, I guess, 7 or 8 months while the war was still going on, and through this little thing I'm going to tell you about now, and we went up to Leyte, and we were at in the invasion of Leyte. But the only thing I ever saw were kamikazes. Kamikazes were doing all the damage.
Can you tell us about the kamikazes, the purpose of them, and
Well, we had one little run after we got to the Philippines. We went out just for a day and came back, and we tied up alongside another destroyer, and we were just right up against them, and there was a young fella about as close to me as you are, and I said, "Where have you guys been?" And he said, "We've been over at Ormoc," and I guess that's on the other side of the Leyte, and he says they're diving their planes into ships, and I had never heard the word kamikaze. That wasn't being used yet, but that was all we saw. We were bombarded from the beach up at Okinawa and things like that, but that was the only real activity against ships that I was ever aware of. It was all kamikazes.
I've read about that a little bit in the terminology. Kamikaze was translated to divine wind. It was a mission that they had to stop our advance to the mainland of China. I understand the closer you got to the mainland of Japan, the more kamikazes there were.
Yeah, well, we started we took this convoy up to Mindoro, and there were the army was on the beach up there, and they needed supplies, and I guess they needed ammo and gasoline, and we found out that when that ammo ship blew up, we knew what we were taking up there, and we were out 5 days, and we were at general quarters at our guns for 5 days, 120 hours.
120 hours at general quarters.
120 hours. And when it was quiet, you could take a snooze, pull up your life jacket and take a snooze. But we were at our battle stations for 120 hours.
Did you yourself, you were a kamikaze survivor?
Yeah.
Did you come close at all to?
Yeah, we got hit at Okinawa. We didn't get hit in the Philippines. We went to after this Mindoro thing, when we lost all those ships. We came back to Leyte, and then we were in the invasion of Luzon. That was way up the. That was one of the big invasions there, and one thing had happened to us as we were leaving, as we were forming up this convoy from Mindoro. We were just going out to where the convoy was forming, and I was on it at that time. My battle station was up on Gun 1, and we were at, I don't know if we must have been at general quarters, because I was up on Gun 1 sitting on top, and I looked out ahead and I saw a marker buoy out there. And a friend of mine, Leland Kaiser, lives in Julesburg, was up on the bridge, and I said, Lee, I said, do we see that buoy up ahead? And he said, well, yeah, he said, I see it. He said, I'll tell him about it. And we keep getting closer, and I call him, Lee, I said, we're heading for that buoy. Did anybody see that? Well, nobody paid any attention to it, and all of a sudden I felt something bump, and the whole ship fell in, and we went over it. And we chipped a screw on apparently a rock or a sunken boat or something up there, and it bent the propeller on the ship. And when we'd kick the speed up a little bit, the ship would vibrate. And so we could only do, I don't know, 20 knots, 22 knots or something like that. So that thing vibrated all the way up to where we were going in Mindoro. And if we went a little faster, it vibrated a little more, and we'd slow down a little bit. Well, on the way up was when we had this horrible experience. We'd a ship called the William Sharon. It was one of the Liberty ships, and we didn't know it, but it was high-octane gas and ammunition. And we went alongside, and she'd just been hit. Kamakazis, she was on fire, and I was up on Gun 1, and we had to go up and assist with tying up, and we came right up alongside of it, and they had these great big bollards, and we had hawsers we had to put around the things, and I was told to jump over and connect this. Well, there was a young boy about my age, and he was part of the crew, obviously, of probably the Navy Armed Guard on that ship, and he was dead, and he was lying there kind of on that bollard, and had to move him, and then I put the line around it. We got secured, and then we had the general quarters thing went off, and we had hoses and men aboard. We're putting out the fire. We had men on their bridge and helping wounded and getting people off, and I don't know how many of their wounded we got off, whether we'd gotten all of them or not, but we had to shove off to unmask our guns. We couldn't fire while we were alongside this ship, and we did, and then we came back alongside. At that point, we'd left 2 of our men over there, and they're waving at us on the ship. So after the firing was over, we had an all clear on it. We had to go back and get these men. One was our first-class torpedoman, Bud Wiederhold, and we got him, but the captain ordered the hoses and everybody aboard again. We tied up again and worked on their fire. We had another general quarters, another raid came, and we pushed off again, and I think we went alongside of her 4 times and finally got the fire out. We had all of her wounded on board. We had to leave her a derelict, and we went on. We had to rejoin the convoy. She'd gone on, and we had 11 destroyers with the convoy, and I think 48 ships or something like that, and then a bunch of PT boats. It was quite a thing, but this was just the first few hours of a 120-hour ordeal.
Mm-hmm. Your first sighting of a dead body and the ship blowing up.
I'd never seen a dead guy before.
You were fortunate that it didn't blow up while you were alongside.
Yeah. And it was picked up and towed in later as a derelict, as she was taken in.
So you headed north from Mindoro?
Yep, we were under Kamakazi. We were our battle stations for all the way up, and at general quarters a lot. We shot down several planes on the way. I think we on the Maduro thing. I think we were credited with at least 3 planes. I've got all that right here. I can give you, if I put on my glasses, I can give you a lot
that's okay.
more.
Let me ask you just in general. Once the flotilla was formed up, how many destroyers were there out there on the Battle of Okinawa in this time frame, and how many got hit by kamikazes?
At Okinawa, of course, we had the picket line out there, and we had 11, or I think 15 picket stations, and we had destroyers on all of those. We had 151 destroyers up at Okinawa, and I think 121 of them got hit.
121 hit by kamikazes.
Yep. That was a terrible campaign. Okinawa was. I think we lost close to 10,000 men up at that's just a memory, but
A lot of this has not been written about. I know that you have received a book. You have the blue book right there. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the book that you're.
Yeah, there was
Kamikaze Nightmare.
Bill Sholin was a great guy. He was on.
Hold that up.
He was on a destroyer, and he was. He wrote 3 books, and this was his 3rd book, and this has got all of the information on all of the kamikaze attacks in here, and some of these things are really, really bad. And we did, in answer to your question a few minutes ago, we did get hit by a kamikaze. We got it on April the 16th, and we'd been up there on a picket station for 5 or 6 days, and the Japanese by this time were forming they were kind of bunching their raids. They were calling them the Kikasui raids, and they were. There was one right about the 1st of April that came in with just swarms of planes, and they'd get us all at once, so they'd overwhelm all our boys out on the picket line. And we were in, well, they had the second one about the 6th or 7th, and we were in one on the 16th of April.
45?
Yeah, and there were lots of planes. But we were, we had orders about 5 or 6 days before that to proceed south and rendezvous with the floating dry dock that was to be brought up there. And we escorted her up, and we got up to a little island right off of Okinawa, where it was called Karamaretta, and it was just nothing but a volcano crater, but it was a haven for damaged ships, and it was a huge harbor. And we got back up there on the 16th of April, and when we were standing off, we were with another destroyer, the Putnam, and the raid came in, and there were 2 planes that we saw, and one of them was just goofing around and finally took off and dove down on an oil tanker, the Tulagi, or Tulugi, I guess it was. And our fire followed it right down. The bursts were coming, and we hit it just before it hit the Tulugi. I was afraid might have killed some guys on the Tulugi, but we got the plane. But the other one, we're on the other side of the ship, and I'm going to hold this up so the camera can see it. This is a picture of the midship part of the USS Wilson, and I was standing right about here with a good friend of mine from Fall River, Massachusetts, Tom Stanton, and we had the phones on. We weren't doing anything. We were just manning the depth charges, but we weren't dropping any depth charges, so we weren't doing much. But he had the the glasses. He was watching with the binoculars. And this one plane was back of us over here, and we thought our gunfire followed it down to the Tulagi, and but the other one was circling around, and it peeled off and was coming right in low on the water against us. And we had a 20 millimeter machine gun up forward here. We had a 20 millimeter here that jammed, and these guys took off. They knew this plane was going to hit us. And the plane came in at about, I don't know, 100 yards out. This 20 up here might have made a hit on him. But it hit the water, and it glanced up, and it hit our ship. Well, the bomb came loose, and we were there. The bomb went into the ship right here, but it didn't explode. And the bomb traveled just about to midship and came to a rest right over our magazine for gun 3, which is right up here. You can't see it in this picture. But the bomb, the detonator on it exploded, and it penetrated into the magazine down below. Well, this set off powders. Now, we'd just taken on ammo. We had we had 500 powders and 500 projectiles in this magazine. Well, 7 of those powders exploded, and the magazine was closed. Of course, it was airtight, and the theory is that when those 7 powders exploded, it took all of the oxygen out, and there couldn't be an explosion, and the whole ship didn't blow up. If that magazine would have blown up, the ship would have been history. But it killed everybody in that magazine. But the plane glanced, the bomb came off, went in here, the plane glanced, and the motor landed right in it. This is a 40 millimeter mount. It isn't in this picture because this is an old picture and we didn't have the 40 millimeter yet. But the engine stopped there, and the plane then kind of catapulted and went off the far side of the ship. Well, Tom and I were standing there. Tom had the glasses, and he had the glasses up to his eyes. I said, "Tom, we're going to get hit." I said, "You better get the hell out of here." And I said, "Tom, we're going to get it." And I grabbed him by there. He says, "Go ahead." He said, "I'm watching him." And I took about 3 steps, and I don't know how long, I'm talking about maybe a second. And that plane had hit, and I, in that time, had just reached the other side, and the plane had just catapulted across the top of the ship and was falling into the water. And I saw the pilot, and there were several guys on the bridge also that verified that the pilot was clearly visible. They saw him, but it fell into the water, and we lost all the guys that were in the magazine. And
how many were there lost in the magazine?
There were 5 down there, and and there were 3 of our men blown off the ship. Well, John Curran and Ted Ryman were on the bridge at the time, and they asked the captain for permission to dive in and get our fellows that were blown off the ship, and which they did, and they went in, and there were mattresses and everything floating out there in the water, and they got a mattress and got these guys up on a mattress and saved their lives. And John Curran and Ted Ryman got medal for heroism for that.
Heroism.
Yeah. And but they saved 3 lives.
Well, speaking of debris in the water, I've seen photos of the Kamakazi pilots wearing these silk scarves, and you told me that you had recovered one of these. Here it is. I'll hand it to you if you could open it up and just tell us a little bit about what this is.
This is beautiful silk. I was given this. I don't have any idea where it came from, but it is a Kamakazi scarf. It's very nice silk. And But anyway, we went. We spent the rest of the Okinawa campaign up there. We and we were out on the picket line for a long time.
Was there any opportunity to repair the Wilson? You're out there with a hole in the midships.
Yeah, we after we were hit, we went into Karamaretta, which was this huge volcano, and when we went in, the thing was just full of destroyers that had been hit. There were, I don't know, there must have been 25 destroyers in just the worst shape you can imagine. I had a picture of one of them here. I had a picture of the Lindsay here someplace that was.
That was that.
We'll
that
find
long,
it.
That long one.
Yeah.
We'll show that at the end.
Yeah, but all of these destroyers. I mean, it was a sad thing. They were having funeral services on one of them, and the ships that were just blown to pieces were in there.
Were they doing burials at sea at that time?
Yes, they were, and I don't think they were doing that here. I'm sure they had a special ship for that, and I know they were. They had a graveyard on Okinawa by this time, and I know that a lot of our dead were being taken over to Okinawa for a burial. Mm-hmm. There's an article about that in Bill Sholin's book here.
When the war ended, VJ Day, did you ever come in contact with any Japanese troops?
Yes, after we went to back to Pearl Harbor after Okinawa, we had to have permanent repairs made to the ship, and we were over there for about a week being repaired, and then we went down to Saipan, and we were supposed to go up to Dutch Harbor up in the Aleutians. The idea was we would make raids on the Curlew Islands, but I guess they knew the war was going to be over, and they changed their orders. We went to Saipan, and we just sat and waited, and when the war was over, then we went up to Iwo Jima, and our job up there was to do the surrender process with a couple of the major islands up in that group. One was Chichijima, and one was Hahajima, and we spent a few days at each of them. These were pretty impressive places. Chichijima was the Japanese communication center for their Pacific Fleet, and it was there. All of their messages went out from Chichi, and it was very highly fortified. We arrived at the harbor entrance and stood off and waited a while, and finally we went in, and nobody came out. And the first night we were there, I think we were at general quarters. What good it would have done us, I don't know. They'd have blown us out of the water in one salvo, but I think we were at general quarters all that night. And the next morning, they sent a barge out to the ship with people on it, and they picked up our garbage, and they were probably hungry was the way they did it. They took our trash, and then a few days later, or maybe a day later, they came out. There were some bad things happening on Chichijima.
Did you get to Hahajima?
And we went over to Hahajima. Then we did the same thing over there. We were just do the surrender thing, and we had one more thing about Chichi. The only way you could get to that island, it was so heavily fortified, was our dive bombers had to come in the harbor entrance, low on the water, do their firing, and then pull up out of there. And I think there were 11 cases where the planes came out and were seen to be hit, and the pilots bailed out, and they saw 11 men land on that island that could never be accounted for, our pilots. And there have been a couple of books written about this. Flyboys was one of the best, and another one was a book by, I've got it down here, I think. But anyway, Flyboys was one of the best, and it gives the list of the names of all the pilots, and they found the remains of some of them, and the remains had been cooked. They had eaten these.
The fate was that they'd been cannibalized?
They had been cannibalized, and they had been served in the officers' mess, and there are all kinds of statements to support that in both of these books, and it was a fact, and there were several Jap officers taken to Guam for a military court, and they were convicted and hung. And that's all documented history. There's no.
Well, at Hahajima, did you get off the ship at all?
That was one of the rare times there was really nothing going on there. They'd surrendered and everything, and I think it was probably a week or so after we'd first arrived there, and they were aware of us and everything, and we were given a Liberty party. They had a little airfield right on the beach over there, and they let us go over and play baseball or whatever we wanted to do, and we had a little Liberty break, and I don't know, half of the crew or a fourth of the crew or something went over there to play baseball, and a couple of friends and I, one was Leland Kaiser from Julesburg, Colorado. He and I and McCrae went over there he lives back in New Jersey. And we decided that we didn't want to play baseball. Let's take a little hike. We hadn't been off of that ship for a long time. And so we hiked up one of these trails, and little trails going all over the mountain. And we went up probably a half a mile, and we came to one of their gun emplacements. And this place was just honeycombed with little hidden pillboxes. And we went in one of them, and here's the gun in there. And we looked out the slot, and here's the Wilson sitting down there at anchor. And we thought, gosh, wouldn't it be funny if we fired a shot over her bow, But then we didn't think it'd be so funny, so we didn't. And we went back down, and as we were coming around one of the bends in the trail, we looked ahead, and there were 7 Japanese soldiers coming up, and they all had rifles. And we thought, gee, this isn't a very nice place to be right now.
The war had ended, but yeah.
Yeah. The war was over, and I wonder if they know it. And we sort of looked at them, and they looked at us, and they took a couple of steps towards us, and we took a couple of steps towards them, and then a couple more steps, and we got up pretty close to them, and we smiled, and they smiled, and finally there was some handshaking, and pretty soon we were offering them a cigarette, and they offered us a cigarette, and we were changing. We gave them a couple of coins we had in our pockets, and they were giving us stuff. And one of them gave me his watch, and I still have that watch. And when you were out at my house talking to them, I tried to find that watch, and I think one of my kids got it in my jewelry box or something.
You'll find it, Dick.
It'll show up. But anyway, I had that watch for years, and I think that we could have invited those boys out to the ship, and I think we could have signed all the surrender papers and taken care of it right then.
At that troop level.
We had the case in hand.
Well, during the war, how'd you keep in touch with your family? How was the mail or communications?
Mail was very slow. Sometimes if we'd go to supply box, or excuse me, supply base. We could pick up mail. Sometimes a tanker would be coming out, and they knew we were in an area. They'd bring our mail out, and we'd get a whole bag of it, or maybe 2 or 3 bags. But sometimes it was really a long time. There was once it was like 6 weeks, and when it was just you just didn't know. And my girlfriend had broken up with me 6 weeks prior to my getting a letter that I got in that batch. I remember that. And she was aware that we'd broken up, but I wasn't.
You weren't.
So she broke up, but I hadn't yet.
Well, was there any censorship of the mail?
Yeah, I have one little thing that I saved here. My mother was always worried sick about me. She was even more worried about me than I was, I think. But we had a thing called V-mail, and somehow it was electronically transferred to something in the United States and then mailed in the United States. And I have a V-mail that I sent to my mother, and the officers would censor our things before it was sent. So you can see that there wasn't much of a message. That
Can you read the message that's not blacked out, Dick? You see it?
Let me
Use
see
your glasses.
here. Dear Mom, sorry I haven't written, but blank, 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 wrote you last. We haven't had mail for over a month. Tell Bev it's hard to find time for writing. Blank, 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 blank. Don't worry about me because I'm okay. Write soon. Love, Dick.
Love Dick.
She probably saw about enough of that to say, Dick who?
Right. Well, I've heard about the good Navy meals that they have. You know, the troops were eating Spam on the beach. Were you living pretty well with the food that you had on the ship?
We ran out of just about everything. We had beans, we had spaghetti, we had rice, we had bugs and what bread they had that we ate anyway. We were really out of about everything. And I remember one little incident. Lee Kaiser, my friend from Julesburg, Colorado, and I got word that the officers had a ham and a bunch of good food up in the refrigerator. Now, they ate different food than we did. They had their own cooks, their own waiters, the people to press their clothes, and they were eating a lot better than we were. And Lee said, you know, I could really, we're talking on the radio, he's up on the bridge and I'm down in the torpedo shack. It's 2 in the morning. We have the midnight till 4 a.m. watch, and we're hungry as we could be. And I got to back up just a little bit. We also had a record player, and I'm not sure where we'd gotten it. Somebody went over to make a sightseeing tour on an aircraft carrier and came back with a record player that we had in the torpedo shack. And we were securing V-discs, which were records made by the bands here in the country during the war for our men overseas. And these V-discs were being sent over, and the Red Cross sent them to ships. Well, the record player that the Red Cross had given us was in the wardroom, the officers' wardroom, where they were serving this great food at their meal times. And Lee said, you know, we've got to get some more records. And we were swiping them from the officers' wardroom. And some of which I have right here at my feet. I'll show you in a minute. So the idea was we planned this little raid on officers' country, and I was going to go up the port side of the ship, and it was lights out. The ship was running dark, and I was going to go into their galley, which I did, and the idea was at the same time he was going to go into the wardroom, and there was a little window there where their cooks passed the food through to the officers to their dining room. Well, he was going to be in the wardroom getting records, and we'd done that part of the scam before because we had a whole bunch of their records. And I got up there and I opened the refrigerator, and gee, there was some ham there, so I sliced a bunch of ham and I laid out some bread. I had the light on in there because I had the hatch closed. And I made a bunch of sandwiches, and I got them all ready to go, and Lee is up at the window talking to me, holding the record. He says, "Do we want this one?" And I said, "Yeah, take that." "No, not that one. Take." And a hand reached over, and I saw it had a khaki sleeve, and it was an officer's shirt I was looking at. And he said, "What in the hell are you guys doing here?" And, well, that was my key. I scooped up the sandwiches, flipped out the light, put them under my arm, and raced down the port side of the ship to the torpedo shack and had a sandwich. Well, in the meantime, they've got Lee.
Oh, they got Lee.
And, well, I went off watch at 4 o'clock, and I couldn't go up there and rescue him, you know, because I really didn't carry too much weight up in officers' country. So I went down and went to sleep right away because I was very tired. And it wasn't about reveille time, which was 2 hours or an hour and a half, I don't remember. Ryman, torpedoman, 3rd class, report to the officer's wardroom. And then they repeated it. And I thought, well, I better get dressed and go up there. And I was up there, and they had Lee. And we were told that we were on report, and serious things were going to happen, and we had to stand a captain's mast, which we did. And at that time, I mean, it was so bad out there, and we had been through so much by this time. And the guy said, "Well, you've got to spend, I think, a total of 8 hours down in the bilge, cleaning the bilge." And I think we did that after we got to port. We didn't have to do that while we were at sea. And that was our captain's mast. And later, a lot of the information I've got in my diary here came from the ship's log, all the dates and things like that, and a lot of the real facts. And our officer's log, or our ship's log, became available to us. Lee Kaiser knew somebody that had a high-tech government office in Washington, and he said, "You know, these things are available. You can get copies of them." And we got a copy of the complete log of the USS Wilson, all the officers' original notes in there, and those steaming as before, 8 to 12, were at such and such, and gave the location, and you got the whole stories in there. And our names and our little deed does not appear in the ship's log.
They didn't get there officially.
And they didn't do anything to us. They didn't demote us. They didn't do anything.
Well, you're at sea and with no liberty. The food situation's tough, and on the beach there were USO shows in the rear with the gear, and probably the only entertainment you may have had would be movies on the fan deck. Did you ever go to any movies out there, or anything happen about that?
Yeah, when we were in port, we'd have to be in a port someplace, and one terrible thing really happened at Iwo Jima. Of course, the war was over, and you'd have lights on, and we'd have movies on the forecastle, which to our audience would be the front part of the boat, and they had a screen set up out there, and everybody lounge around and watch a movie. Well, we all still had to stand our watches, and there were some people that had the 8 to 12 watch, but there were guys that had to get up in 2 hours and go to the mid watch at 12 to 4, and We waited around and waited around for the movies to start, and here, finally, it was time for the movie, and up would come one of the officer's stewards and bring the captain's chair up, and he'd place it there, and then finally everybody'd have to stand up, and the captain would come up and plop down in his chair and snap his fingers, and then the movie would come on. Well, everybody is really getting sick of this. The war's over, and one day, one of his stewards was overhauling his chair, which I guess meant steel wooling, and he had to go do something, and the chair was there, and he came back, and the chair was missing, and the guy looks all over for it, and he contacts the officer of the day, and well, it was finally a search made of the ship. No chair, and obviously somebody over the side with the chair. Well, that thing was sort of a symbol of our long wait before the movies, and kind of our
a message.
Yeah, a message we were trying. Well, the message was there will be no more movies. So we were sitting there doing nothing for. It must have been another 10 days, and the water was just as clear as a bell. You could see, I don't know, stuff growing on the bottom, and you could see sharks. The sharks were all over the place. We watched them swim by, and we'd swung around on our ankle. Somebody, hey, look, there's a chair down there. So
guess whose chair?
They brought the captain's chair up, and they dried the darn thing out, and so that was the end of that.
Did the movie start again?
It dried out, I guess. It was kind of funny because it never looked right again. It wasn't quite as green. The plastic wasn't as green, and it was kind of grody.
Yeah.
But,
well, it kind of sounds like you were headed back home and perhaps toward Hawaii here, and you brought in a Life magazine here.
Okay. Yeah, this was actually done at the time when we went back to. This was done when we went back for repairs, I think.
It's dated August 27th, 1945.
Yeah, it was August the 27th.
After
okay.
VJ Day, 10 cents.
Life magazine had a luau.
A luau.
For us at Punaluu, which is clear out on the end of Oahu someplace. And they let about 80 of us go out to this. They furnished transportation, and of course, we didn't go with the proper bunch, and I don't know, rode out there with somebody on a pickup, different story. Got into trouble for that too. But Life magazine did a big spread for us in their issue of August the 27th, 1945. And there we all are. Would you hold the
Sure, let me hold it for you, Dick.
Yeah. And this half a head right here is me. Can you see by the ear there that's my ear there? And there was another destroyer. It says, Navy veterans of Okinawa stop off on way home for an old-fashioned pig roast.
Old-fashioned pig roast, and there are a lot of sailors here. Looks like
a lot of sailors
kissing the young ladies. I mean,
well,
it looks
they
like
had
quite
young
a party.
ladies out there. There weren't quite enough to go around, and but I did get to sit next to one, and I remember one thing that at a given time we were supposed to kiss these girls, and there wasn't much noise, and all I can remember is her saying to me, "Not on the lips." And
so this as you sailed home, of course, these photographs show up here, but there's Jordan Greenwald of Grand Rapids. You might There's a picture
Yeah,
of
Virgil
his sailor.
Wollenberg is from, and he and I were very good friends on the ship, and he is, as far as I know, still alive. He's in a wheelchair, but he's shown here kissing a girl. That's Virgil Wollenberg there, and this one, you can read what that says.
Right. Jaron Grunwald of Grand Rapids, Michigan is kissed by George Westenrick of San Francisco.
Yeah, yeah.
And what
He was
happened?
engaged to a lovely girl in San Francisco, and the engagement terminated right there when when this
was published
when
in
this
Life
was
magazine.
published. Yeah, the engagement was over.
Engagement was over. So anyway, you headed back to the States and got off the Wilson. And
Yeah, I was actually transferred off of the Wilson. That the war was still on when this was taken. And when that was in Life magazine, we went back and we were at Hahajima when this other little incident I told about meeting the Japanese patrol. I got transferred off of the ship at Hahajima and got a ride on a patrol craft to Iwo Jima, stayed overnight there, and then caught a PBY Catalina, was flown down to Guam, stayed there overnight, and the next day I got on the USS Yorktown. Now, I didn't mention this earlier, but when we went out, went to sea for my first time on the Wilson, I was we escorted the USS Yorktown out to where we did the firing exercises in the Hawaiian Islands. And we escorted her to Hawaii. And then we did our little deed. And well, when I got to Guam, after the war was over, I was given passage on the USS Yorktown, and she was bringing, the war was over then, and I came back on the Yorktown.
the Yorktown,
And
on the aircraft carrier.
The whole hangar deck was just shoulder to shoulder, 6-story bunks, and they brought back 10,000 GIs on that.
On 10,000 on the
GIs
Yorktown?
on the Yorktown, and it was something.
It must have been something. Well then, how much longer were you immediately discharged when you got back, or were you in the Navy for an extended period of time?
I came home on a leave. I was not for, no, I came home on a leave then from the Wilson, and came back to on the Yorktown, and then I went home on leave, came back, and I went to Shoemaker, California. And I was there about 2 months, then went up to Everett, Washington, and was assigned to the USS San Juan, which was an anti-aircraft cruiser. And I was on her for about 2 months. All we did, she was in a shipyard up there, and we went out to, I think we went out one day and went up to Bremerton or someplace where they were going to put her in mothballs.
So when did you get discharged?
I was discharged at...
what date, year?
Oh boy, that's... I was discharged in Bremerton, and it was... I don't know.
It was some months later.
Yeah, it was some.
But
yeah.
you just didn't automatically get discharged
on the
because
San Juan for about 2 months.
You didn't have enough points
Yeah, I was a low point guy.
to get discharged. Well, anyway, we got your discharge papers and headed back to Nebraska.
Yep, I got a ride back. They gave me money for transportation home. It was very kind of them, and I paid somebody, I think, $30. He was taking GIs wherever they had to go, and there were a couple going to Omaha and a couple going to someplace close there, and 5 of us got in his car, and for that money we rode straight through to Lincoln, Nebraska.
So we were coming out of a depression, the country was. We were coming out of a World War, maybe 15 years of real hard times. What options did you have?
Well, I had an opportunity to go to college, and which I did. I went to the University of Nebraska, and I was discharged in May, and I mean, there just weren't any jobs. The band I had played with started up again. We went back to playing a little bit, but then it got more and more. Things got back in the going again, but there was just nothing in the summer. It was just everybody was just so broke. Nobody had any money. And then when fall came, I enrolled at the University of Nebraska, and well, I was there 3.5 years and graduated from the university, and so did all the members of this band. This was kind of a remarkable band, the Eddie Garner Band. It was a good band, and it was all comprised of young fellows that had gone to high school together, played together, and then were in this, most of us were in this band after the war.
So you're mature young men. Do you think that if the GI Bill had not been provided for the veterans, would you have gone on to college, Dick? Do you think that?
I don't think I could have afforded college. Mm-hmm. There was no money. Mm-hmm. Things were really tough then. Mm-hmm. And I had an old junk car I bought for $125, an old 32 Plymouth Coupe. I painted robin's egg blue and drove that thing, and there just wasn't much money. Mm-hmm. And the money we made playing really supplemented things.
Well, what did you study in college?
I had one of those great degrees. I had a double major, psychology and sociology. And you know, with a psychology degree, you can just do about anything. I don't know if anybody ever did anything with one of them, but...
Well, what field did you enter then after you got your degree?
Well, I had married then, and we decided that we'd take a trip, drive around the country a little bit and see where we wanted to live. And we came to Denver and stayed for about a week, and liked Denver very much. And we went down to Tucson and Phoenix and went over to Houston and up the East Coast. And my mother by that time had was working in Rochester. She was head of the social services department at Strong Memorial Hospital in Rochester. And she later, incidentally, went to Detroit and was head of social services for the Ford Motor Company. She had a real good job. But anyway, we had been in Denver, and we liked Denver, and I drove out from Lincoln, and I don't think I had $50 on me, and I stayed in a cheap hotel and just started pounding the pavement looking for a job. And I went to work for the retail credit company. If you bought insurance, they'd get a report. The insurance company would get a report from retail credit company to see what kind of a guy you were. And my job was to investigate people and go around and see if they drank and if they ever got a divorce and if they ran around with other women and you know, paid their bills and everything. And I'd make up all these reports for retail credit. And that was not a job with a future. And I wrecked my car while working for retail credit, and I went into my insurance company, which was the Travelers, and they sent me to a garage where I was going to get it fixed. And I was back up there talking to their gruff old claim manager, a gentleman by the name of Arnold Graff. And I mentioned to him that I was working for Retail Credit, and I was unhappy over there because I didn't see any future to the job, and I always wanted to get into claim work. And I'd heard about Travelers, but they only hired lawyers in their claim department. So I said, I know you can't hire me because I know that you don't hire anybody but lawyers, but he says, where did you hear that? And I said, well, your office manager upstairs told me that. He picked up the phone and he says, Dolan, did you tell somebody that I didn't? Well, he says, listen, he says, the claim department's my business, the office is your business up there. And he hung up, slammed the phone down, and he said, young man, you're hired. Can you come to work Monday? And so I got a job with the Travelers, and I worked in the Travelers claim department for, well, I worked there for a total of 31 years, but my heart was always, after moving to Denver, and I'd sold my little house in Lincoln, and I had $800 in my pocket. It was just burning a hole. And somebody told me about something they were doing up in the mountains called skiing. And they were just having more fun up there. And they said, you got to try this. They'd been up, and so I went up and it was like catching a disease. I fell in love with skiing. And I went up there the next year, and I went to the little town of Frisco, where I heard they had lots for sale. And the little town of Frisco was selling its lots for $25. $25 a piece. And I bought 6 lots for $150, and I still had about $650 or $700 left. And I started building a cabin. It turned out to be a pretty good place. And I worked all summer long, just every moment I could. And by the end of the summer, by the time the snow flew, I had a place where you could go inside, and a fire in the fireplace, a stove you could cook on, a heater that would heat it. And I was a skier from then on.
From then on. Well, I saw you ski the other day at Buttermilk, 81 years old, cutting down larkspur there. And it seems to me somewhere along the line you may have been involved in the ski business as a sideline, perhaps.
Yeah, I was. It was funny when my place in Frisco turned out to be a pretty nice place, and we had room. We had a big loft, and I was to supplement my very meager income. I let people sleep there, mostly friends, and for $1, $1.50, something like that. I'd usually have 5 or 6 people sleeping there, and it'd be enough money to buy a 6-pack and a couple of steaks for Saturday night dinner, and pretty soon we had a bunch of regulars staying there, and we did that, and I got acquainted. We were skiing Arapahoe Basin all the time, and I got very well acquainted up there with Larry Jump, the fellow that owned it, and the fellow that was its vice president was Harry Baum. He owned a company in Denver, and he was doing very well, and he was the vice president of Arapahoe. And Harry bought the Breckenridge ski area. Rounds and Porter had developed Breckenridge, and it was a major ski area. And Harry bought it and was managing it. And when he left Arapahoe, he and the owner of the main stockholder of Arapahoe, or Larry Jump, were good friends. And he says, well, let's make Dick the vice president. So I became vice president.
Dick Raymond, vice president of Arapahoe Ski Base.
Finally, all these years I was somebody. Now I are one.
Yeah.
But, anyway.
And still skiing all through these years.
We skied there for years, and then finally I dropped off of the board. After I'd been over here a while, it wasn't convenient anymore.
How did you live in Glenwood now? How did
Right.
you happen to come from Denver to Glenwood?
Well, we had personnel change down in Denver. I worked myself up to as high as I could go in the Denver office, other than managing. I could have transferred and probably been. I was supervising adjuster down there in Denver, and I could have probably transferred to some other office, but I was stopped there as far as any promotion goes. And I'd traveled over here in my early days with Travelers, handling claims and things like that, and I worked up into where I was doing a lot of other stuff, training the adjusters and handling their suits and stuff like that. And I had they wanted to put somebody over on the Western Slope, a resident claim man. And I thought, you know, that's where I really always wanted to be anyway. So I thought, I'll just see if I can do that. So I put in my application for the resident job over there, and I took a couple of demotions to do it, but I was the resident man, and I worked for Travelers for 31 years. I finished out, I think, 17 years. And
17 years over here?
The minute I got over there, I had a lot of time on my hands.
Sure.
We didn't have a lot to do, so I got my hammer and nails out and bought some land. I bought some land on the Roaring Fork River, and you've been around here long enough to know that what land is worth down there now. I bought property there for, it was actually 9 acres. There was only about 1.5 acres of it that was usable. But I got that property for $3,500.
Oh my gosh.
And I told the lumber yard to bring the stuff out. I started hammering nails, and I built my house. And
you've got a dream home. I enjoyed being up there. Well, Dick, after all this experience with the military and with Travelers, do you still have any contact, reunions, or any of the veterans you served with on the Wilson?
Yeah, I had some mixed feelings about the war and about the years overseas, and it was just something I tried to, just like everybody did, just to forget about the war. You know, it didn't happen. We got a life again, you know, and you didn't worry about it. And a note came advising of there was going to be a reunion of the USS Wilson, and I got a couple of calls. Hey, Ryman, you're coming to the reunion, aren't you? And I said, no. I said, I'm not going to go. And I called one of my best friends, Maynard Sevilla. He was out in Palo Alto, California then. I says, hey, Sav, are you going to that reunion? He says, no. He says, I don't remember any of those guys. And we didn't go.
Didn't go.
But there was another one, and I never missed one after that. The best friends I ever had.
Well, you brought in here, I'd like you to show this. I'll read it. It's a medal that was put out by the Wilson, or the...
That was for the Kamakazis.
The Kamakazis survivor, Philippines and Okinawa in World War II.
This was a medal, actually. This was not an authorized medal. This was made by the Kamakazis Survivors Association and made available to us. And it isn't a medal that you can wear with, well, you can wear anything, but it isn't an authorized medal. A gentleman out in Washington State started an organization that was the Kamikaze Survivors Association, and this is one of the 3 books that he wrote. It's called The Kamikaze Nightmare, and Bill Sholin was a good author, a very bright man, and did a lot of research on this. And the first 2 books were just really his gathering information, and one of them was called The Truman Decision. It was analyzing whether we should have dropped the bomb or not. And of course, Bill Sholin is of the firm belief that we should have dropped it, and approved of his dropping it. But this thing takes you all the way through it's called the Kamikaze Nightmare, and it starts with the first kamikaze thing, and it shows a picture of the ship, and it tells about the ship being hit, and then there are letters and reports and everything that he could do to document this from the guys that were actually on the ship. And we're in this in a couple of different places. Here, the place where we got hit is pictured in here and everything. And it was basically what I told you before about the time we got hit. But that's all in this book. And Bill was a great guy and a very knowledgeable guy and knows more about the kamikaze thing. It upset Bill and it upset everybody that the kamikaze thing was never talked about. It was never advertised. But just, I don't know, for some reason, but Bill Scholen says, let's get it out there and let's get those guys that were hurt.
And you're doing the same thing, Dick.
Stuff. Let's let people know about it. That's
and you're doing the same thing in your memoirs, which you just updated yesterday, right here, before I was old enough to vote. How did your services, experiences in the service affect your life? Do you think it changed your outlook?
Oh, yeah, I think it did. I think it gave my life some direction. I don't think if it hadn't been for the war, I don't think I would have gone to college. And it would have changed everything. I don't know where I would have gone. I think I probably would have taken a shot at going to New York and learning to be a good drummer. But I wouldn't have made it. I've since then met so many good drummers. And
you have been playing locally with Walt Smith up until a few years ago.
Oh, I played with Walt until my hearing got so bad that I couldn't hear what Walt was playing anymore. No, Walt's one of my best personal friends, and I played with Walt for 5 years. Yeah. And he's still playing.
Still playing, yeah.
Very well, I might add. And
that's good. Well, Dick, is there anything you would like to add that we've not covered in this interview?
No, I think we've covered everything. I think Bill Scholen did a great job in getting the word out about the kamikaze thing. It was just something that was kept hidden for years, and I'm glad it's out. I wonder if anybody cares, but now we know.
We care and we know. Okay. And thank you very much, Dick, for coming up here today and being with us.
Well, thank you very much.
And for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, that went well.